Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Command Point. My name's Ryan, and today I'm joined by my co-host Shane.
Hello.
How's it going, Shane?
It's going well. I'm having a good couple of days.
I bet, because you are just coming off of your victory during the Bay Area tournament simulation. So a field of 64 players, and you beat all 63 of those guys.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have to beat all of them, but yeah.
Yeah, but still, you won. How does it feel to be the winner of the world's biggest kill team tournament in history?
It feels pretty crazy. The only thing that I wish was different is I wish it was like an IRL tournament. That's the only way it would have been better. But still, I mean, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's I'm just glad that I won, and it just feels pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I just did the Beer and It podcast yesterday. I did that interview that's on his Patreon for anybody that follows him. I mean, it's been like 3 days now. Still doesn't feel real.
Yeah, you're still just celebrating, just sloshed off Jenny Cream Ale and
I
haven't.
Yes, essentially.
Yeah,
that's basically it.
Yeah. Overall, it was a great showing for Command Point. I mean,
oh my god, yeah.
All the Command Point guys that were in it. I myself came in 6th place. Sean came in 8th place with his Tyranids, and then you obviously came in 1st. So I'm very happy that we were able to.
Honorable mention to Ray J.
Yeah, for sure.
Who was top 32? He made
top 32.
He got out of groups.
Yeah.
He was 6th in the last one. So, but yeah. No, we did pretty well. We didn't even have to rig it.
We didn't even have to rig it.
I was worried it'd have to come to that. No, but seriously, I'm very happy with how the entire tournament went. It was a blast to play.
Yeah,
a lot of fun to run, albeit stressful at times.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, no, I mean it couldn't made it all worth it, you know.
Mm-hmm. So for the first part of this podcast, we're just going to be talking about the tournament. Basically, just things like your roster construction, how your list actually functions, certain matchups and stuff, secondaries, all kind of like the nitty-gritty stuff about your list. And then towards the end, we're going to take a few moments to answer some questions from the mailbag over on our Discord server. So if any of you guys listening have any questions, you can just like about Kill Team or tournaments or just the game in general, you can head over to our Discord and drop a question in the mailbag. Mm-hmm. Link in the description.
Mailbag episode.
We love those. Yeah. Okay, so first off, you chose to run Astartes for this tournament, which is very against type for you because basically the whole time that you've been playing this game, you've been playing hordes, or I would say like semi-hordes. So things like orcs, heretics, demons, and necrons, like those are kind of like the 4.
Xenos.
Yeah,
a lot of Xenos.
A lot of Xenos, yeah. So what was it that made you decide to choose Astartes for the Bay Area tournament simulation?
So I basically I didn't go that hard in preparation for the Invitational, and I just really wanted to focus on running it and making sure everything went smoothly. So I took an orc roster to that, and I didn't put in like a ton of prep. Like it wasn't like a huge process creating the roster and then like prepping for every game. And then when I got eliminated, I was like, it felt like crap. Honestly, it was weird because I was like, man, there's all these good players and I'm playing them for the first time, and I feel like I could have done a lot better. So I went into this one with like the mindset of I'm going to try my hardest to win. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to find the strongest thing I can, and I'm going to try and win. And I went through a bunch of different lists, a bunch of different factions, and I ended up deciding that I think Astartes was the strongest thing. It went very well for me.
Yeah, obviously.
I had created a Blood Angels roster, or list rather, that was basically designed to kill T3, and like Drakari especially. and the rest of the list or roster was composed of Black Templars, which I kind of derived from your White Scars list.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I added the Grav guns because I realized how cheap those things were and how good they are at killing like Marine equivalents, basically.
Yeah.
And the I had a few extra storm shields, and the only thing I didn't have an answer for in the sub factions, like in the roster, was Psychic. So when I played against Psychic, I had to run the mutt list. But yeah.
So what was it about the Black Templars and Blood Angels that won you over compared to other Astartes sub factions such as Salamanders?
Salamanders, to me, it feels like it's like a very middle of the road kind of. I know it's like considered to be one of the best, but to me, it's always going to be serviceable. It's never really going to be bad, but I feel like it doesn't excel enough at anything. And I don't want to say that Salamanders can't succeed. I mean, I definitely think they can, but I think you're going to have a harder time taking a team to top table and placing top 2, top 4 with Salamanders compared to this Templar team on this packet, because the Templars, I might as well have just run all Templars this tournament because I never got to actually use my Blood Angels, so I guess we can just talk about Templars mostly. I mean, first of all, since we're on Arena on BAO, it's all Arena. It's very well suited to melee. Doors being open brought some question marks into that, but I think in the end it was definitely still better for melee teams. And Templars can get into combat easily. I've said before, I think rerolling charges is like one of the best native abilities in Kill Team. I mean, just especially when you're running a team with like 6 bodies, which was what my Templar team essentially was. It was like if one of those bodies fails a charge, that's like 23 points that is just sitting there not doing anything.
Yeah, just waiting to get hit with a flamer or something.
Yeah, I mean, as nice as the benefits of White Scars are, it was like I can easily just mess up a charge here, and I can't tell you how many times the rerolling charges got me in when I otherwise would have failed or had to have spent a CP or something like that.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, as someone who did run the White Scars instead of the Black Templars against your judgment, when you're building a melee team, you definitely need to think about the vehicle that you're using to get those models into combat anyways. So the Black Templars on Arena definitely outperform the White Scars in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like the more expensive a model is, the more, especially like a melee model, obviously, the more expensive like a melee focused model is, the more you need to be able to reroll charges, in my opinion. Yeah. Like ironically, like teams like Orcs, like Evil Sun's Orcs specifically, where it's just like a horde of boys, it's not that big of a deal if you fail a charge with an Orc, like an Orc boy, in a swarm of red. But if you fail a charge with like a Storm Shield Vanguard veteran who has a Power Fist or a Relic Blade or something, then that sucks. That's like a huge, that could kill your game. Yeah. Like all your momentum can just go out the window. Mm-hmm. So in order for a team like this to work, like a super heavy, like elite melee team, they need to be able to reroll charges. You need to make sure that they get in. And also, if you aren't spending CP rerolling charges, that's CP that goes towards Death Deny. Yeah. Which is, I mean, anything you can do to not spend command points as this team, you need to look that way, because Death Deny trumps everything. Yeah. It's like one of the only faction tactics that is more important than like a decisive strike or like a reroll or something.
Yeah. And I mean, like Salamanders, they do offer you the benefit of you're not spending CP to, I guess, like reroll a hit roll and then reroll a wound roll, but the way that you constructed your roster, you kind of weren't really reliant on rerolling hits or wounds, because the models, they had so many attacks already, even with Power Fists. Yeah. Like on average, you're putting out like 3 Power Fist attacks on the guys with Power Fists.
Everybody had 3 attacks, so it's basically like the Sternguard leader. He's a sergeant, so he has 3 attacks. The Intercessor Sergeant has 3 attacks. Yeah. The Vanguard Veteran with the Fist was a combat, so that brought him to 3 attacks. Yeah. The Vanguard Sergeant has 3. The Veteran Sergeant has 3. So it really kind of balances itself out.
And then they all have Power Fists, so you're not going to have to hardly ever re-roll a wound roll, except for the guy with the relic blade. But even then, it's still the
Wounding
numbers
on
are
threes,
so good in your favor.
Yeah, and what's nice about it is, like and really you don't need mathematically you do not need to have a hit or wound reroll unless you're against like, weirdly enough, another Storm Shield or like a Custody or something. 3 attacks with a Power Fist or Relic Blade is mathematically enough to kill most unit, or not kill, but get to an injury roll.
Yeah.
It's just the math is always in your favor in combat situations like that, so I didn't really get too worried about rerolls.
Yeah. 9 models from your roster were Blood Angels. The remainder were Black Templars. Do you think that, like, going forward, Astartes players need to include multiple sub-factions or multiple Space Marine chapters in their tournament rosters to stand a chance of real tournament success?
I mean, it's tough to say, but I mean, for me, I guess, again, I could have run all Black Templars and it wouldn't have changed anything because I never had to play Drakari or Harlequins or anything. But here's the thing: if I ran into those teams, I would have had, like, the Templars wouldn't have done it.
Yeah,
they would have lost in all likelihood, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think it's with the way that you can kit Astartes out with the like a million different ways you can play them. I think you're kind of hurting yourself by not splitting at least 2-2 on a 20-man roster. So like or rather 2 sub-factions on a single roster. It's as long as you are very aware of the purpose that they're fulfilling. So like I knew exactly the situations when I was going to take my Blood Angels, and I knew the situations when I was going to take my Templars. And you need to make sure that those situations are well accustomed, or at least good at handling the gatekeepers. You need to keep that in mind before you go, because I made this thinking there's probably going to be a lot of Necrons.
Yeah.
There's probably going to be a lot of Drakari. So I need to have answers to those things. And I don't think with Astartes, at least I haven't found something that has a really good answer for everything. Because even in this tournament, I was really worried about Psychic. I was really worried about the 2 games I had to play Thousand Suns.
Yeah.
Fortunately, those went my way, but I think there's a lot of scenarios where it doesn't go my way. But yeah, I mean, I think you need to diversify as much as possible, be prepared for all the possible situations that you can, and I think the best way to do that is with 2 sub-factions.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Blood Angels, not exactly like half of your roster, but let's just talk about it a little bit, because I think this story, almost half, because I think the story behind the creation of this roster is hilarious to me.
So, yeah, when Sisters of Silence came out, this was like the start. This was like how it started. This is where like the seeds were planted. I was running the Sisters of Silence so that I could like talk about them on the pod. And I was forced to use the bolters because that's their only ranged option other than a flamer.
Right.
And while using the bolters, I was like realizing that they really did do pretty decent work against a lot of T3 and even against some T4 with like bad saves. So it like I was thinking about it and I was like, I wonder if with like Astartes, for instance, who are like more tanky than the Sisters of Silence, like toughness 4, and they have like Death Deny and Battle Brothers, and they have so many options. Like I wonder if you just went bolt guns and chain swords, like the most vanilla stuff ever.
Yeah.
And like just to save bodies or save points to add more bodies, like what you can end up with. And I ended up with 9 men on a 125 point roster for my Blood Angels, with the idea of if you just played these guys against toughness 3, first of all, if the charge isn't looking good, then you can just walk forward and shoot, because they all have bolt guns. Because there's so many Space Marine models that can take bolt guns and chain swords.
Yeah.
Or like with some of the company vets and stuff, they can take like 2 chain swords and a bolt gun, something like 3 arms or something. Like I don't know. So I mean, you get 9 bodies doing that, and if the charge isn't good, it's not like Black Templars where like you're in a situation where you're forced into melee because these guys have bolt guns. You can just walk forward and shoot, and then when the charge is good, you go for it. And I made it, and I wrote it on Battlescribe, and I showed it to you and some other people, and I was like,
What was
I was laughed
knee-jerk-
out of the room.
Yeah, the knee-jerk reaction was, "This is ridiculous. Where are all your?
Yeah.
How are you gonna? What is this even for? What do you mean? It's just a bunch of chain sword attacks and a bunch of bolt
Yeah.
guns. How are you gonna go up against any other sort of faction besides Toughness 3 with this?" But that was the beauty of that roster, was that you would only ever run it against Toughness 3 factions. So you're going with the Blood Angels, you get the +1 on the wound roll. You're already strength 4, so you're going to be wounding on 3s. Blood Angels make it wounding on 2s.
Yeah.
Even the volume of attacks is tremendous, so it's defeating things like Harlequin 4-up invuln in the fight phase, Drakari, shenanigans, I guess I should say. Yeah, no, it was definitely tailor built for what it did.
Yeah,
and
it was really good against. It would have been great against Genestealer Cult. I played it against Matt Howell when he was prepping Genestealer Cult and did pretty well. I won that game. It would have been great against Demons if I had to play them. Harlequins, like you played Harlequins and won with that list.
And it worked spectacularly.
Drakari was the big one. I probably played like 7 or 8 Drakari players before the tournament with this list, and I went undefeated against Drakari. If like a Orc Boy Evil Sons, like that's not T3, it's T4, but with 6-up saves, they do really well against that.
Yeah, Orcs die really well.
They do. Yeah. Basically any T3 other than Sisters of Silence and Asuryani.
Yeah.
And Asuryani, because they have so many power weapons that the Storm Shields they do so much work.
Yeah, so you would rather be running the Black Templars against them.
And I did that against Alex Ritnerak in our game in top 16, and it was really effective. And then Sisters of Silence, because everybody has a 3-up save, so I don't want to bargain too much against 3-up saves. Most T3 have bad saves.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of it. And if I saw Sisters of Battle player that was that was for some reason running a lot of like Battle Sisters and not Arcos, then I guess in that situation I would take Templars. But most Sisters of Battle players that are going to be like playing it optimally are going to have a lot of Arcos.
Yeah.
So again, that's Blood Angels for me.
Yeah.
I think there's too many people though that look at this game and look at models, like they'll see a model that isn't useful in a lot of occasions, and instead of saying when is this good, they say this is never good. Like a perfect example for me is like a Reaver. My Blood Angels had a Reaver Sergeant, and he had 4 attacks. He's got 2 wounds. He's with the Blood Angels team, he's wounding on 2s against everything that I'm taking him against.
Yeah.
I can use him for Battle Brothers. He has like the leadership things too, which are pretty useful against these chaff models. I found a situation where that model was really effective for me. Yeah. Even though, you look on any discussion about Reavers and they're trash, don't ever use them. Yeah. It's like there are times when you can use almost anything. I would guarantee there's very, very few like truly useless models in Kill Team. Yeah. Like you just need to find the situations for them.
How would you, I guess this kind of goes hand in hand with like prepping for your matches this tournament, considering that it was like this was like a 2 months long tournament where every week you were playing a game or multiple games. So let's talk about how you would basically like muster your kill team during the tournament. And it's not like you had 15 minutes to choose what models you were going to take.
I had like a week,
because you had a week to like study, look at your opponent's command roster, all that other stuff, and then decide what you would take. Was there kind of like, I guess, like set kill teams that you found yourself bringing more and more, or was it more of like a ad hoc, almost every single time the kill team was different, even if it was like a slight difference?
Yeah, I think my favorite was the 2 grav guns, 2 storm shields, intercessor sarge, and then the leader. Also, you could do, instead of the intercessor sarge, the zealot, because he would have been 1 point cheaper. But that was the team where I wasn't dropping a body, I was just changing what I was taking, and it would let me get 3 CP at turn 1. A lot of the time, that one I found to be really effective.
And the reason for that was because it was clocking in at like 113, 114 points. Your opponent, more often than not, is going at the full 125. Yep. So you're 10 or more points below, so you're picking up that extra CP. Yeah. Which is important because a starter starting off the game with 3 CP means they're starting off with Death Denied in their back pocket. And we'll get more into that later, but continue.
Yeah, Death Deny first turn was huge. But yeah, it's funny enough because the list basically started with, 4 Storm Shields, Intercessor Sergeant, Stern Guard Sergeant. But until the finals, I don't think I ever took all 4 Storm Shields. And I lost that game. So, I mean, I was always taking a Grav Gun or 2. And then in the Psyker matchups, I took 4 Grav Guns. Actually thinking about it, I may have taken 4 Storm Shields in my game against Skinner. Maybe. Yeah, I did, actually. So that was actually the other time I took 4 Storm Shields because...
So what was he running that made you want to take 4 Storm Shields in that instance?
He was also running 4 Storm Shields.
Oh, yeah.
That's the reason.
Yeah.
He had a lot of plasma with his Dark Angels.
Right.
And I kind of forgot about that one because we were just kind of bumping into each other until the game ended. That was...
There was, yes,
very
that
few
was
things
how
died.
that game happened, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really found myself liking the Grav Guns more and more. I was thinking I would take 4 Grav Guns against Necrons, and I think I did. No, I didn't. I did not do that. But if I had to play like Paul, for instance, and his Lich Guard spam, I would have gone 4 Grav Guns there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was the story of throughout the tournament, I just fell more and more in love with Grav Guns because they're like so cheap.
Yeah.
And they're so
such an
cost
economy
efficient.
model.
Yeah.
Right. What is it? It's a company vet, and then they have the Grav Guns, so they're coming in at like 15 points or
15
something.
points, and you get the free chainsword.
Yeah, so they're tremendous flex models for the faction.
Yeah. I loved them against Necrons because they can snipe the Lich Guards pretty effectively, and if they get in combat with a flayed one, they can actually like potentially kill it.
Yeah.
Because 3 attacks with the chainsword, I mean, if you force a flayed one to make 2 armor saves, they're probably going to fail one, even if they're 0 AP. So, and it's 1 damage. So.
Yeah.
Real nice.
If I haven't said it already, I'll say it now. We're going to have the list either in the description or somewhere else where you guys will be able to find it, so you'll be able to follow along with this conversation. Okay, so basically the way that you mustered your kill team, you just had like the time to look at what your opponent's roster was, and you were pretty good at figuring out what exactly they would be bringing against your team. So would you say you would be able to like effectively counter it or make the most effective kind of like roster against whatever kill team you were facing in that instance?
Yeah, most of the time people took either what I thought they would take or they would take something maybe a little bit worse. And I think it's just when you're prepping, as long as you have the right idea of what their general playstyle is going to be, and then you just look at their roster and say, okay, what's the most optimal thing? And I build that team and I like look at what they can do against me, and then I build against that. So that way, if they take something else, then it's like, okay, this is fine because I don't think this is as scary to me as the other thing. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. I was a little bit worried that Alex might take the Alex Ritnarek might take the platform, the weapon platform, for instance,
weapon platform, yeah,
because it would have been, some pretty scary shots on me, the Star Cannon. If I it was just like another armor save I could fail before I get in. But he ended up not taking it, so it was something I didn't have to worry about. And honestly, a lot of it had to do with the week's worth of prep. You have more time to figure that stuff out. And I know most of the people I played against were prepping too. Like I don't think it was just I was the only one doing it, but if you can like kind of semi-accurately predict what they're going to take, then you're generally on the right path.
Yeah.
To just like countering that team with what you have available.
Yeah. Did you find that it was more important to know your opponent's play style, or more important to look at their roster? I guess. I mean, I know the two go hand in hand, but like, what do you think gave you more of a leg up?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Was it player knowledge or was it roster knowledge?
I had to think about that. I think there were instances where I really didn't know how to read how the player was going to play.
Right.
Like with James Skinner, I didn't know how he was going to play Dark Angels. I really don't. I don't know much about Dark Angels for starters.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know that much about James Skinner's playstyle. He's mainly a Thousand Suns guy, and I haven't even watched him play that very often. So, or at least I hadn't up until at that point. And then Ash with Thousand Suns, I really don't know her playstyle too well, but I just kind of went off what I think like an optimal Thousand Suns player would do. So yeah, I mean, but then against Micro and against Alex, I kind of have a general idea of how they play, in addition to what they're going to bring. So I guess, yeah, you're kind of right. Those do go hand in hand. Like I didn't see Micro mixing up his team or throwing me for a loop at all. He has things that he thinks are optimal, and that's usually what he sticks to.
Yeah.
And Alex, he just plays super aggro. I mean, he didn't take that weapon platform, but that was the only shock, really. I mean, I figured he would try and play super aggro, and I knew that would just kind of play into the Templars playstyle a little bit better.
So looking at the BAO packet and the secondary objectives, how did you go about selecting them? Did you plan on taking a specific set kind of when you were also constructing your roster? Were you looking at the secondaries and going, okay, I'm going to take these models because they are good at scoring these secondary objectives? Or were you going to be taking a specific set that hardly ever changed? Or was it more like an ad hoc approach determined by the opponent that you were facing?
So
a lot of stuff in that question.
Yeah, no. I'll try to tackle it. Yeah. So when I was choosing a faction for BAO, so like the earliest stages of prep, I was narrowing it down to factions that I think can actually score some of these secondaries, because
of course
they're a little bit harder to score than like what we were seeing on LVO. So with that said, it was a lot of okay, I'm looking at bounty hunters and I'm looking at obliteration. Those are the two ones that I was taking the most time to consider, because they seem the most attainable.
Yeah, so bounty hunters, you're just killing a model in melee, or you're just killing a model and then you're just getting on the point to pick up the token.
Well, yeah, but especially for melee, because you kill it and you consolidate right onto it and then you get it, and that's all.
Yeah.
So that was I think I took it every single game. Maybe not against Skinner. No, I didn't take it against Skinner because I didn't expect to kill things.
Yeah.
But
so many storm shields.
Yeah. But every other game I took it because I expected to kill.
Yeah.
And I usually maxed it. It was the easiest one to get. And there's obliteration, which was just about as easy to get, but there was like always the possibility that I could roll like a 1 on the D3.
Yeah. Because
everything's D3 damage. But I think I usually got it. I never ended up whiffing that much on it.
Yeah.
And then the third one would be totally based on the map I was on in combination with the faction I was playing against. So a lot of the times domination was a really good one because there was objectives in the middle, so I could just run my guys onto those objectives, kill anything that came near me, and then get domination and hold the objective. So it was like a triple whammy kind of.
Yeah.
Some of the maps, even with like a 6-man team, data recovery was the best. Like those Mission 1.
Yeah.
On Generatorium, like there's like corridors and like they're on opposite sides and there's big walls in the middle, so like it's really hard to deny data recovery on that map. So I would take that there. And then like I in the last game of the tournament I took Reaper, which was I know you guys had some choice words for that one, but it was like I think I also took Reaper in group stage when I was playing against Death Guard because the guy ran Poxwalker spam against me.
Oh, okay.
But with a list that's entire objective is getting kills, I literally, it's like if I can get like I looked at it kind of like the old thin their ranks secondary, so it's get 2 kills in a battle round and then you score a point. But I was like, well, it's a little bit harder to get diced on this one because what if I score, or if I kill 3 in one round and then 1 in another? With thin the ranks, I wouldn't get that. But with Reaper, it still gets towards that thing, and I would have gotten Reaper that game if it went the final round. Really, it was just looking at the the matchups, like if I didn't think I could get kills, which is pretty rare with that team, but like again with James and his storm shields, I didn't expect to kill anything, so I didn't take kill secondaries there. So then I would go pure positional, and just with the idea of these guys are really sturdy, it's hard to kill them. I'll just plant them somewhere, and hopefully I'll score those positionals, because you won't be able to take me off the board. But it wasn't as easy to do that in this packet, because the positionals are a little more difficult. Past that, though, the maps had a big part to do with it. The maps and deployments sometimes said, you got to do this.
Yeah. So. And then your secondary choices, you never ran up against Custodes, did you, in this tournament?
I did not.
Yeah, so they probably would have drastically changed if you had to, right? You probably would have gone more positional than killing.
It would have been kind of like my game against James. It would have been pure positional with...
right.
I can't remember what I ended up... I took Engineer and Data Recovery against him, and Domination. Those are the three I took. Against Custodes, maybe on certain maps I would have done the same things. Maybe I would have tried to hold the perimeter, but yeah, it's all map based, really.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about how your kill teams operated in the kill zone. So, what tactics did you use every game, and then what did you have to be cognizant of whenever you were moving your models? Because there is a lot of synergy at play with two tactics, Death Deny and Battle Brothers, and then the models that you're taking, and how this machine basically works.
Yeah, so basically the whole theory behind my movement with the Templars was I'm going to advance up the Storm Shields turn 1, and like if I have 4 Storm Shields, then maybe I'll leave one kind of staggered a little bit back. The idea being, and then the Intercessor would also be staggered back with the leader.
Right.
With the idea being, if turn 2 I lose initiative and I get charged, then I can at least countercharge.
You have a countercharge, right?
And then with the Intercessor Sergeant, I would always try to... So what I would do, like in the game against Micro, for example, the last game, I put one of the Storm Shields in a place on an objective where I knew he was going to be taking shots, and I made sure to put the Intercessor within 3 inches, like around a corner out of the firing lane.
Right.
So that way I could use Battle Brothers, which is basically Savior Protocols for Space Marines for SCP. So like I fail a save with a 1 wound guy, and I can spend Battle Brothers and pass it on to the 2 wound Intercessor. So nobody dies, he just goes down to 1 wound. It's like a really, like, why reroll when you can just know for a fact that you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And it's still the same point cost as a reroll at 1 CP.
Yeah.
Very good tactic.
And then obviously Death Deny, like you said, was a huge thing. Weirdly enough, it didn't play much of a part in the finals at all. Though, I mean, the threat of it did, but I never really ended up having to use it, I don't think.
Yeah, and I have a theory about that we'll get into in a second. Or actually, I guess that's coming up right now. But basically, like, back to my question before, your Blood Angels, if you ever were to run it in the tournament, it kind of would have worked the same way.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have the Intercessor Reaver, you have the Intercessor Sergeant.
Or the Reaver Sergeant and the Intercessor
Reaver Sergeant and the Intercessor Sergeant. And then they would basically just like stick within 3 inches of your one wound guys.
Yeah.
You can pass off the wounds to them.
Or even, honestly, the Blood Angels utilizes Battle Brothers a lot better, because you've got, first of all, like you said, 2 Primaris. And also, if that isn't an option and it's like a guy that you want to keep alive, there's also 2 Scouts who can eat a Battle Brothers, and you can just kind of hope that the injury roll fails, because at the end of the day, you'd rather a Scout die than like your Vanguard Sergeant who's got a Relic Blade.
Right.
So, yeah.
What I found myself doing when I played before I played my game with the Blood Angels against Harlequins was I went through that list and I noted in terms of priority which models I wanted to keep alive the most, just so I would know in what instances to be using Battle Brothers. So like at the very top of that list was the Vanguard Veteran with the Relic Blade.
Yeah, because he's the only guy with a multi-damage weapon.
Right.
and then probably that zealot or maybe the sniper would be like right after.
Yeah.
That. Yeah, those are pretty tough models. Strong models that you want to keep alive.
How did you play against psychers with this roster? Because like what you're describing is it's a couple multi-wound models and a lot of single wound models. So, and I mean, some cases very expensive single wound models, like for guys with storm shields. As an Astartes player, I've found the best way to counter psychers is to take things like rocket launchers and like Primaris Eliminators with their las guns or whatever they have.
Oh, the Fusils, yeah.
The las Fusils, yeah. And then just a bunch of like other Primaris guys and hope that their strength 4 AP1 bolt rifles like inflict some damage before they get on top of you. So how did you, with your Black Templars, with your Blood Angels, go up against Thousand Sons twice and come out on top?
So I was really worried when I saw that I had to play Thousand Sons in group stage, and that was my first game of the tournament. Actually, it was against Tim, who I was worried because I played against him when he was prepping with Death Guard before he decided to play Thousand Sons. So Tim had actually played against my Black Templars with another faction, but I didn't get to play against his Thousand Sons before the tournament with my Templars.
Okay.
So he kind of knew what to expect against me a little bit, but I didn't really know exactly how he was going to play it. So the idea is, like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, I want to have Primaris guys eat Cybolts because they're 2 wounds, and my best shooting on the roster is Grav guns, which are on the Black Templar side.
Yeah.
The issue with this plan is I've only got a single Primaris on the Templar side, and that's the Intercessor Sergeant with the Power Fist. So the idea that I basically came up with was to run a mutt list and to take the 2 Primaris from the Blood Angels side and basically have them stand in front of the 4 Grav guns, because that's my best option to snipe out like psychers, because in the case of Thousand Sons and Grey Knights, those guys are 3-up saves, so they get melted by Grav guns. And I would just keep I would basically have 2 groups of there'd be 1 Intercessor Sergeant standing in front of 2 Grav guns in 1 firing lane, and then the Reaver Sergeant standing in front of the other 2 Grav guns in another firing lane, kind of just marching up the board. And I would hope, so I basically, when you play like this, you're on a timer. And
right.
It's like, okay, like the Intercessor and the Reaver, they might die, but that's okay as long as by the time they're gone, the Grav guns have taken out the Sorcerers.
Mm-hmm.
And in both games, they did. Which was it was scary because it was a bit dicey. Like, it could have gone against me. It ended up going for me. Especially in the deployment against Ash, I think that really did not favor me that much. It could have gone poorly, like, really quickly.
Yeah. Was that when you and I did the prep games for that? Yeah.
And you were killing me in those prep games with Thousand Sons.
Yeah.
So I just could not figure it out.
We did not expect.
And then
victory there.
And then against Tim like really threw me for a loop because he had a veteran Warp Flamer, which I love that in theory because, like, you advance up and then you're ready.
Yeah.
But what he did was he advanced up and then he charged with the Warp Flamer into like 3 of my Grav guns. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
It's an interesting, it is interesting.
So, I mean, that's like my main shooters can't shoot this first round. Fortunately, I was still able to, the Grav guns were in the back in deployment, so I was able to charge with the Primaris and put him like in front.
Okay.
But still in combat.
Right.
And, I cut through that Warp Flamer really quick in melee.
Oh, I bet. But, you've got 3 guys with chain swords plus the Primaris with the Power Fist.
Yeah. And then the trusty, the one Grav gun that didn't get locked up was my trusty sniper Grav gun.
Oh.
And that was the one guy who, on turn 1, sniped out his Aspiring Sorcerer.
Mm.
So that really saved my game. And then against Ash, funny enough, it wasn't the Grav gun that killed her Aspiring Sorcerer. It was my special issue bolt gun and stern guard leader.
That's
because
right.
I would always take him in the matchup too, because he's got an AP2 bolt gun, basically.
30-inch range. It's fantastic.
And yeah, I mean, it did work. The Primaris guys usually died, but you know, they did their job.
Yeah. I think I told you that it's like the most grim dark thing for those guys.
Oh, for sure.
Because
Like,
they know that they have to die in order for the teams to succeed here, and there's nothing they can do about it.
For sure. It's very like thematic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you take models from both lists if that's the most optimal thing, and you say, okay, forget the subfaction, because it's better to have an optimal list than to get
the subfaction bonus.
Yeah, especially because for me the subfaction bonuses were like very melee centric.
Yeah.
And in that game, that's not my win condition.
No.
Is getting into melee. It's shooting the sorcerers. So I don't need either of those subfaction bonuses. They're not really doing anything for me.
Yeah. That's something that I don't think we've seen people do since Elites. At least do it effectively, is just forego the subfaction bonus. Like a lot of people.
Birinid was doing it too, like right at the same time as me. Like we kind of like
okay.
came up with that idea at the same time. And he ended up doing it in like a lot of his games, but he was saying that it was because he didn't like his roster. Like he wished it didn't feel like he kept putting himself in these positions where he felt like the best thing to do was to just run a mutt list most of the time.
Okay. So, you and I and a lot of other people have said before that we think that Death Denied is overpowered, even at 3 CP. And at least it's overpowered in the Killed Hold, specifically speaking, BAO format. However, there were a few moments in the BATS finals in your best of 3 series with Micro to determine the champion, where using Death Deny was a big risk for you, or where it was even preferable to use other tactics instead. Do you think that Heretic Astartes and their Khorne Berserkers diminish Death Deny's overall effectiveness? And then do you think that Heretic Astartes are a boogeyman for Adeptus Astartes because of that?
I don't know so much if Heretic specifically diminishes Death Denied. I think Death Denied still gave Micro a hard time even when I wasn't using it, because, I mean, there were times when he thought about decisive striking and he said out loud, he's like, oh, you're just going to Death Deny, and then he didn't. When, I mean, still, he probably should have, because you just need to kill me twice. That's basically what Death Deny says.
Yeah.
Like, it's not enough to kill my guy once, you need to kill him twice.
Yeah, and Khorne Berserkers, they fight twice. So
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, there is an argument to be made that Heretic Astartes, just through sheer volume of attacks, are a pretty good matchup for my Templars, for the Storm Shields. And I do think so. I think that they're one of the hardest things that I have to play against. I don't think it's an easy matchup for Heretics so much as it's, as far as matchups go for that team, for my Templars, that's one of the hardest ones. And I think that goes to show how strong that team is, because it was still probably overall slightly better for the Templars in the matchup. But like, even with that in mind, it's one of the things I had to worry about the most.
So we've talked about how you ran your roster, how you face off against Psychers, Death Denied. So if you don't mind, let's go through and basically just like recap your best of 3 series against Micro as best as you can from memory, of course. For anyone listening, these 3 games where they were streamed over on our Twitch channel at twitch.tv/commandpoint, and they are going to be uploaded onto our YouTube channel, Command Point. The first 2 games are already up there at the time of this recording. By the end of this week, I believe, I think I'm going to have the 3rd one out before we release this episode.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So, let's just go into top of game 1.
So in game 1, we were on that map with, it was mission 1 on Garrison Vault, so it's the map where you can really easily get trapped in your deployment zone. That's what happened against Skinner. I played on this map already and almost lost. So I didn't hate it, though, because there's only 4 objectives, and I can very easily at least in theory, I can very easily flood the middle of the board with storm shields, and usually in a pit like that, the Templars are going to come out on top. There was a couple issues that happened, and there was one blunder that I made in this game that ended up causing me to lose it. For starters, it did suck that I went first. That was not a good thing, but It ended up not being a big deal because his shooting didn't end up killing me round one. It was actually a pretty good round one. The big issue was that he went first, or that I went first round two, but he decisive moved, and I didn't contest it because I had Death Deny in my pocket. And his decisive move ended up locking two of my guys, my frontmost guys, in place with a charge. And that caused me to not be able to move further into the board. So I responded by just kind of doubling down on that spot and countercharging that one guy with like three guys.
Yeah.
So he was basically in combat with 5 dudes. But what ended up happening was Micro countercharged with all of his berserkers, and he got in with every one of them. He didn't fail a single one. Which, to be fair, he's re-rolling charges, but some of those were like 8 or 9 inches. Like maybe like one of them would fail, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
The big mistake I made was when I was countercharging his decisive move, I moved my leader onto that objective, when in reality what I should have done was move him down into the bottom hallway. I don't know what perspective
I think from the stream's perspective, it would be the north side or the top.
Yeah, okay. So that north hallway then. I should have moved my leader up into that north hallway, not onto that point at the end, but just facing it, because he was going to move cultists onto that point, and I could have gotten shots on them. So that could have got me some free kills. But more importantly, it wouldn't have put my leader in danger because there was no way a berserker could have gotten to me over there.
Yeah.
And even if one tried to, it just would have been pulling a berserker away from that clog in the middle, which would have been great for me. Instead, I put him on the point, and it was very easy for Micro to just move, after he was done charging, move a flamer, another flamer, and a plasma, and point them all at my leader.
Yeah.
Who only has the special issue bolt gun. So he's only killing one guy max if he does kill anybody. But yeah, I ended up putting him on my own objective, which was a blunder in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would have changed anything with the way the dice went in those fights, but he ended up killing my leader with the first flamer. He didn't even need to go to the plasma or the second flamer.
So let's talk about that for a little bit, because that was one of the instances where I was commentating it, and Birinid was convinced that you would have to Death Deny in order to keep your leader alive, because his thinking was he has to keep his leader alive, otherwise he's not going to have Death Deny for the remainder of this game. Mm-hmm. And my line of thinking was, well, he's got all 4 of his Storm Shield guys in combat with these berserkers coming up soon. He still has those 3 CP, and there's another flamer and a plasma gun pointed at his leader. And his leader, like you said, is only going to be able to do one thing and shoot a single target. So, yeah, was that your line of thinking when you chose to not Death Deny with your leader, basically?
That's basically it. If it had been both flamers failed and then the plasma took him out, maybe then I would have Death Denied.
Right.
But the way it was the very first flamer that shot ended up killing him, which was pretty statistically unlikely. But I knew that if I used Death Deny, I would be down 3 CP, and then he would almost definitely kill me right after with the plasma or the other flamer.
Yeah.
It was just very bad odds.
And then going into turn 2, you would only get 1 CP back.
Yeah.
You would have 1 CP, whereas
this way I could at least go into that fight phase with 3 CP.
Right.
And I knew I'd probably need it. I ended up using it on the Intercessor Sergeant, who died later anyway. So, yeah, it was... I didn't use it. I let the leader die. I said I thought my win condition was these Storm Shields. So I'm just going to need to hope that, my saves are good enough and that I can get by with my 1 point for the rest of the game. But the Storm Shields failed me big time in that fight phase. And Micro made a couple 6-up saves, and it just got really ugly really fast.
Yeah.
In a way, I'm kind of glad that it went like that rather than a slow death, because I think... in general, it would have been it would have been a little more harmful, like mentally, for me to go into game 2 after like losing out like that, rather than like a quick, it was a quick, painless.
It was a quick, painless.
Yeah.
I don't know about painless, but near tabling.
Yeah.
I think you had one model remaining after that fight phase.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
I had 3 after the round 2 fight phase, but then after round 3, I called it because everybody had a flesh wound, so I was broken. So my power fist would have been hitting on 5s, and I only had 3 guys left, and it was just I had like he had made like 2 6-up saves in that 3rd round, or I had whiffed with somebody, and it was just like it was very unlikely I was going to come back. So I said let's wipe it, and let's just re-rack and go to game 2.
Right.
Which I think was the best thing to do.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you said what secondaries you would take in that first round, but you would take in domination as one of your your secondaries.
Yeah, bounty, obliterate, which I took bounty and obliterate every game in the series, and then domination was the 3rd.
Yeah, so that's why all those models were basically headed towards the middle.
Yeah, essentially. I was thinking maybe if I pitted the leader onto that objective, I would give him like the false sense that I had taken data recovery. But yeah, it didn't really matter.
Yeah. All right. So this is when I guess the game, either inside or outside of the game, kind of starts to take place for you, because it's a very interesting story. In game 1, you had brought in all 4 of your Storm Shield guys. You brought in that Templars roster because it was almost, you wanted to see how it would go almost, and it's like, if I'm going to experiment with this, let's do it game 1. That way it poses the least amount of risk to me.
And I knew he was a bit like 4 Storm Shields was something that he was not excited to play against,
right? So
I thought maybe I have a little bit of a mental edge doing that, but that was basically the thought process. And if I wanted to take this risk, because I didn't know for sure if it was the most optimal, but I wanted to see. But if I'm going to take any risks, it's game 1. That's when you got to do it.
And then, so going into round 2, you take kind of you take a different approach to your mustering. You take instead 2 grav gunners, sniper and demo spec, and then you bring the 2 storm shields, intercessor, and then the intercessor sergeant, and then the stern guard sergeant leader.
Yeah, so those 6 guys.
So those guys clock in at 113 points.
Yeah, that's the team that I was talking about earlier that usually gets me 3. I had half expected him to go into game 1 down a cultist to try and stop me from getting 3.
Right.
But because he knows that I do that. I think, at least, I'm pretty sure he knew that I done, done that.
That's what happened in my game with him.
Yeah, that too.
You and I talked back and forth, and so that's what I decided was to bring the 113 point man roster, White Scars obviously, but same loadouts, same models.
Yeah, so I assumed that he would drop occultist game 1 in anticipation for that, but I saw that he didn't. So I thought, okay, I think I can actually get away with this. Game 2, and I did. He had brought the 125 points again, so I ran that team, and I started with 3. And that was a really great map to do that on, because there's not a lot of action turn 1 on that map. This was Generatorium mission 1, so the one where you can take data recovery really easily. And so because there was not a lot of action, and the fact that I started with 3, I went into turn 2 with 5 CP, and that was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead with your question. I don't know, you
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of like not really a question, it's more just like highlighting it, because like there is kind of like a side story that goes along with the regular gameplay that happened in the mustering phase.
Yeah.
And so like I guess we can touch back on that at the top of turn 3 when we get into it, but let's talk about turn 2 or game 2 and how that went.
Game 2. So I took bounty and obliterate. That's just really obvious in the matchup, because my odds of killing anything on his team are like really high. Berserkers are like, they go down as easily as cultists basically against these storm shield guys. And then I took data recovery because it's really easy on that map. He ended up going pure positional, which I actually think was what he should have been doing the whole series. He took data recovery, engineer, which is really obvious. If I had more bodies, I would have taken an engineer, but I can't really afford it with 6 models. But yeah, he took Engineer, which he put on a Cultist, obviously. Data Recovery, which is a good combination on that map. And then his third was Domination. Domination ended up going really poorly for him for a few reasons. I don't think it was like a bad choice from him at all. Basically, we move our turn 1, and he gets kind of a poor advance on his Berserker champion. So he ends up like right kind of in that hallway in the middle.
Yeah.
But he makes a mistake because he places his Berserker champion kind of in a spot where another 32 can't walk by him.
Right.
32 mil base. And so when turn 2 comes and he tries to charge, he tries to make an 8-inch charge, or it might have been 9-inch charge with the champion, he ends up failing both of them, which is he's not used to. I know he's not used to failing charges, especially even at 9 inches.
Yeah, because you're re-rolling.
Yeah. He fails those charges, and he's suddenly put in a position where if he moves, I am pointing grav guns at him.
Yeah.
And he's within 9 inches of 2 grav guns. And if he doesn't move, because of the way that he placed that champion, that means his sniper plasma can't walk down that hallway because that guy was behind him.
Right.
And his whole plan was to point his plasma at my grav guns and get in that shootout. But yeah, I think even though if he did make that charge, and moved his plasma, no matter what, his plasma would have been within 9 inches of my grav guns, and I would have been shooting first.
You would have been the first to shoot. Yeah.
And it would have been, still think that would have gone pretty well for me, but the fact of the matter is he failed that charge. He said, I can't move this guy because he's just going to die. And he basically set himself back a turn.
Yeah.
I also think it was a mistake to put the sniper going, because there's 2 ways you can move your guys on that map. You can either go down the hallway, or like around that kind of like the winding corridor.
Yes.
Or you can go out into the open spot where there's a where you're looking down the hallways, the middle hallways, and there's an objective there. I think with gunners, it's usually better to put them in that open spot, especially if it's not an assault gunner. It's like a rapid fire, because it takes a little bit longer to get your guy down that way. And I mean, that's kind of like what we saw. Obviously, it went wrong in a different way, but my grav guns, both of them went into that bottom area, and they did a lot of work. They killed a couple cultists. They ended up killing his Berserker champion after it failed another charge the next turn. And he just wasn't able to get on Domination like after round 1.
Yeah.
Because anytime you moved a guy into the middle, they were either getting shot by grav guns, or they were getting killed by one of my Power Fist guys. So that worked out really well for me. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
In that matchup, you had taken 2 guys with Power Fists and Storm Shields instead of 1 guy with a Power Fist, another guy with a Relic Blade Storm Shield. Why was that?
I was leaning slightly towards the Power Fist because over the Relic Blade, because I really wanted to wound on 2s against Berserkers. Okay. Because I was, after that last game, I mean, I don't actually know if the math on it is any better offhand, but after the last game, and this was a bit of a knee-jerk thing, but I failed so many 3-up Storm Shield saves, and all I was thinking about was, okay, wounding with a Relic Blade on a 3, I was thinking about how it could go wrong. So I'm like, okay, Power Fist, as long as I get 1 hit through, I'm probably going to wound, and he shouldn't make a 6-up save.
He shouldn't.
Micro makes a lot of 6-up saves.
He does make a lot of 6. He is the...
Yeah.
I think Sean, it was either Sean or Bieran during commentary, said that they are the most disgustingly resilient Berserkers in Kill Team.
Yeah. I remember him saying that he got some pretty nice saves against Janice, and I saw it happen against you.
He got fantastic saves against me.
Yeah. Single
model making 3 6-up saves against grav guns.
And he did it a couple times against me, although that wore off after the first game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after he lost all of his Berserkers, I think round 2 or 3, he just called it.
Yes.
And I kind of made the comparison that losing all 4 of your Berserkers as a heretic in like a 12-man list is like losing one of your custodies for custodians, or one of your custodians for custodies, because like when you lose a custody, you probably lose the game. That's a third of your team gone, but it's just not there. For Berserkers, it's actually like the same ratio. For Micro's team, it was a third of his team because he had 12 guys most of the time. Losing those 4 Berserkers, the rest of his team can't do anything really. They can't stack up in the matchup anymore. He needs those guys to get through.
So now we go into game 3. So you're mustering your guys, and previously you had done Formed Storm Shields, like full 125 points, whatever. Next game you did 113 point roster. And so game 3, when you're mustering, what is it that you did?
So at the end of game 2, he asked me, he said, how many points was that again? I told him, it was 114. And so the second he asked that, I knew that he was going to drop a cultist. So I knew there'd be no point in doing 113. So I take 3 Storm Shields, 1 Grav Gun, Intercessor Sergeant, and Stern Guard Sergeant Leader. And he, like I thought, he dropped a cultist.
Right.
So he basically did that for nothing. But I mean, his thought was, like, I get it. After that second game, you kind of have to almost, but I don't know. It was kind of an easy call for me.
He was down a body for no reason, basically, is what happened.
Yeah, basically. I mean, he wasn't that upset about it when it happened, but like, yeah, that is what happened.
Yeah.
And then game 3 was mission 2 on Garrison Vault. So this was the 4 objectives all in the middle of the board, and you're on the long edges, and you're like running at each other to get onto the objectives.
Yeah, very scary deployment for you.
A little bit, yeah, and it was also scary for him. I mean, for neither of us want to, like, we both do, but we both don't want to be running at each other.
I mean, it feels like it's in your kill team's natures to do that. You know?
I mean, right.
But
that's basically what our teams
do. With the way initiative works, it is pretty terrifying.
Yeah. So the way I saw it, so game 1, I had taken domination. Game 2, I had taken data recovery. Game 3, I'm looking at these objectives, and I'm basically thinking, I don't want to take any positional because we're going to be forced into fighting each other. So I just want to benefit out of that, like that kind of bloodbath that's going to happen as much as possible.
Right.
So I went bounty, I went obliterate, same as the first 2 games, but my third was Reaper. The reason for this was game 2, I had killed like 4 of his guys in a turn basically, and they were like dropping really quick once we started to get in. And I was thinking about this, like over like a 4-game span, the odds are really good that I'm going to kill 6. I was basically killing 6 on pace to kill 6 like in 3 rounds most of the time.
Right.
So that was pretty much a no-brainer to me.
Which is hilarious because myself and Sean thought that you had mispulled a secondary.
Yeah, no.
We didn't expect you to be taking Reaper. You know, you think Reaper, you're like, okay, it's an auto take against like hordes if you're a killy team, but like this is not that type of instance.
Yeah, I know. It was like, I also didn't think you would expect me to take that. So that was another thing. I mean, it ended up not really playing a part because...
Yeah, it didn't because of how the game turned out, but
yeah.
Do go on.
Basically, I went initiative turn 3, or game 3, round 1, which is terrible for me.
Yeah.
I really would have liked to react to him. I won initiative all 3 games, actually, which sucked, but I wanted to be able to...
very hard.
I wanted to let my bolt rifle intercessor, my special issue bolt gun leader, and then my 1 grav gun react to his movements and maybe get pot shots off at berserkers, but it just never happened. So I saw where his sniper was. It was kind of like in one of the corners. That's his like main shooting threat. It was the sniper plasma. So I see where it is, and I just move all of my non-storm shield guys into positions where there's just no way, no matter where he moves, he's going to be able to see them. And I knew I wasn't going to be getting the best shots that way, but it was whatever. They were all staggered behind anyway, so they would not be getting charged next turn in all likelihood, or at least that was my thought. I move like that. I put a guy on 1 objective on the right side, standing in the doorway, which we'll talk about later. and I put 2 other storm shields up on the other objective, kind of near his door, knowing that whoever won initiative next round was going to get some charges off, no matter how it ended up going. Basically, he moves. He doesn't do anything super aggressive, but he does like this. He gets shots on me with his flamer, which I expected. And at the end of the movement, he uses the terminal, and he rolls. He gets a 4-up to use the terminal, and he opts to try and close the door that my guy is standing on. So when this happens, the door can't close, but the guy in the doorway can take a mortal wound. He rolls a 4-up so that he can use the terminal. He says he's going to try to close that door. In this situation, I get to roll, and on a 5-up, nothing happens, and I deny it. But if I fail, I then have to roll another die, and on a 1, only a 1, I take a mortal wound. All of these things happened, and I took a mortal wound. It was, I think it was like 93, 94% chance that wasn't going to happen.
It must be somewhere around there. Yeah, I think somebody said it was like an 8% chance of it happening.
Yeah, so like a 92% chance that 8% doesn't go against
chance
me.
Seems too high for me, though.
Very unlikely,
if I'm being honest.
So he does that, and I can't do anything about it. So I roll the injury roll. Thank God he doesn't die. He just takes a flesh wound.
Yeah.
I was immediately in a bad place after that happened. I got very tilted.
Yeah.
But I tried my best to not let it infuriate me. Then of course his 1 flamer, I fail an armor save against it, and I have to spend another CP to. So I don't forget what my first CP was. It might have been I had to re-roll the injury roll.
I think that might have been it.
Yeah.
The injury roll on the guy that got caught in the doorway.
Yeah, but either way, at the point when he shot his flamer at me, I had 1 command point left, and I failed an armor save against the flamer, and then I had to pass it off onto the intercessor with Battle Brothers.
Right.
What sucked about this was it made it so that turn 2 I was going to have only 2 CP.
Which means no death deny.
Yeah, and there was definitely going to be a lot of fighting turn 2.
You're right.
And I knew that, so that hurt to have to do. But yeah, I mean, it was annoying after all. And then to add insult to injury, I get the 1 shot that I get is with my storm shield that I regular moved. I throw a crack grenade at his flamer, and he had actually kind of blundered here because he put his flamer within 6 inches of me because he didn't realize that I normal moved because I was normally advancing them.
Right.
And the crack grenade, really good math against the cultist. You hit on a 3, you wound on a 2, they don't get a save, and it's D3 damage, which means you can get obliterate.
Yeah.
And all that happened, and I got 3 on the damage roll. So I roll 3 die, and I need a 5 because he was in an inch of intervening terrain, and I don't get it. And I'm like, all right, well, that's what the other
right.
CP was.
Yeah,
I
now
re-roll.
it's coming back to me.
Yes.
You re-rolled
the 3 damage injury roll.
You rolled the max damage for your crack grenade.
Yep.
You spend the CP to re-roll an additional 3 die. You just need a 5-up.
Yeah, I basically
rolled
a
single
6 die.
5-up on 6 die. Didn't get a 1.
Yeah.
But then the door closed and caused a mortal wound. The odds, this is where the odds came in. I think Sean said it was 91.
I think it was 93.
93% odds of you killing that cultist, scoring obliterate, scoring
kill more,
kill 1.
And it didn't happen. So yeah, those 2 things happen, and
it's
I'm
an
immediately
extremely tilting situation.
Yeah, I mean, some of the craziest dice you're ever going to see in that first round.
Yeah.
So in the end, nobody dies in the round. We both hold 1. I think I positioned that first round really well, and everything worked out really well for me. But I got basically nothing out of it, which sucked. And then turn 2, I lose initiative, and this is huge for Micro.
Right.
He basically. So, you know how I mentioned that I have those guys staggered back so that they can
countercharging. Yeah.
He ends up opening a door in the middle, and he needs an 11 to get onto both of these guys with a single berserker, and he gets the 11.
Yeah.
So he locks up my backline guys.
Did he even have to reroll?
I don't know if he did. I don't think he did. He locks up my backline guys, who I was going to countercharge with, which really sucks. And then he charges the 2 berserkers, or the 2 storm shields that are on the left side, and then he charges the berserker he charges the storm shield on the right side, all with berserkers. So he's got 2 berserkers fighting my 2 storm shields on the left, 1 berserker fighting my leader and my intercessor in the middle bottom, and then he's got 1 berserker on my 1 storm shield on the right. And he is going to get to fight first with every one of them. So I know I'm in a position here where I'm like, I have to decisive strike. There's no other option for me.
Yeah.
So we get to the fight phase. I don't think anything happened in the shooting.
Before we go into the fight phase, would this be considered in your mind a worst case scenario? Because outside looking in, it looked horrible.
Yeah,
it looks like a very tough spot for you to be in.
Yeah, I thought, this is a bad position. I really did not like my situation.
Because all those berserkers are going to, like, assuming you don't decisive strike, all those berserkers are going to be able to fight twice before you can even fight back. And your guys have storm shields, but still the volume of attacks that they can put out is ridiculous, and all your guys are only 1 model.
Yeah, I mean,
or 1 wound.
Without a reroll, I don't hate the odds of 1 storm shield surviving 1 berserker. So that situation on the right didn't bother me too much, and I knew in the middle, the 1 guy on the 2 guys, I expected him to kill 1 of them, but I didn't think he was going to kill both with just 1 damage weapons, even fighting twice. So I didn't think that was going to go that bad for me. I thought maybe he'll kill 1, which he ended up doing. And on the left, I knew that if I was going to decisive strike anywhere, I was going to be there. So, and there was another thing in the movement that actually sucked there. So I had 1 guy that I could move because everybody got locked up except for 1 guy.
That's right, the company that with the grav gun.
Yeah, the grav gun and the chainsword, and he's 10 inches away from a 10-inch charge away from one of the side hallways where there was a single cultist on an objective.
Yes.
So my thought process was, if I can make this and kill this guy, which a 10-inch charge re-rolling isn't that bad, right?
No.
I make that all the time. And worst case scenario, though, I would fail it. Not actual worst case scenario, but in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll fail it, but I'll walk into that side room and I'll be okay.
Yeah, potentially get on the objective, contest it.
Yeah, or at least get out of line of sight, or at least get out of line of sight of him.
Right. Instead, what happened?
I roll a 7, which isn't enough, and then I re-roll it into a 2. And the problem with this is taking the 2, I was in range of his flamer still, even moving the max distance towards that cultist on the left. So I failed the charge. I couldn't shoot with the grav gun, and he was going to have to eat a flamer. And I'm pretty sure he didn't kill. I think he whiffed with the flamer, so it ended up being okay. But that situation really sucked. Anyway, so moving into the fight phase, I knew I had a decisive strike, so I do it on the left, and he contests me, and he wins it. Now, at this stage, he had 3 CP when he contested decisive strike, and in my mind, he blunders a little bit here, because the whole series, I was worried about him doing the decisive strike into up and at him combo.
Right.
And he decisive strikes, but he does it with his combat. And the problem with this is when you decisive strike with your combat, you can't up and at him, because it says when you fight with another model, spend 1 CP, and then you may fight with your combat.
Yeah. So there's this chain you can do where
he would have been able to fight
strike
twice.
With 1 model, spend another CP, another mod. Your combat spec immediately fights. Yeah.
So he would have been able to fight with 2 guys before my decisive strike went off.
Right.
But instead, he fought with his combat, so he couldn't do that, and he ended up whiffing with his combat. So I get my decisive strike off, and I pick the relic blade, and my hope is I can kill his combat and the other guy, splitting the attacks 2 and 1.
Right.
I end up killing his combat, which is a huge thing because that's his only multi-damage, and I whiff on the other guy. But still, this is a good position because that other guy now, even with 2 activations remaining, pretty unlikely to kill both of the guys, if any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that kill, and I'm like, okay, that's 1 berserker down. There's 3 left. I've still got all my guys. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, these dice have been terrible for me this game, especially after the door stuff, and then the Snake Eyes charge, and then failing a 3 damage injury roll.
Yeah.
And my biggest hope, as I'm thinking, I need a big turn. I need some luck because, honestly, even in game 2, I don't think I had a lot of luck. I think it was just like things were working as expected. It wasn't like working above expectancy.
Mm-hmm.
In game 1, it was pretty bad. I failed a lot of storm shield saves.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, if I can have a turn with really good luck, this would probably be the only turn in the whole series where I got really, really lucky. And sometimes you need a little bit of luck. And
for sure.
I think so far Micro had a bit more luck than me. Up until this point, he gets to fight twice with the Berserker on the left. He gets to fight twice with the Berserker in the middle, and then he gets to fight twice with the Berserker on the right. And of all of those attacks, so this is 6 series of attacks, so 3, 6, so 18 attacks that he puts through. He only kills my leader.
Yeah.
I make all of my Storm Shield saves. The only guy that drops is my leader, who, I mean, at that point, I'm like happy. Like I'm not that bothered by it because my Storm Shields are still alive, right?
Yeah.
And once he's gone through all his attacks, I get to fight back. So
that's an insane amount of attacks.
Yeah.
Like the fact that only one model was taken out of action or even wounded or flesh wounded or whatever is pretty unreal.
Yeah. And then on the left, I kill his last Berserker on the left side. On the right side, I kill his Berserker there because the math is pretty good for me to kill his Berserker anytime I get to fight them.
Right.
And then the Intercessor
Sergeant. Because they don't have any sort of invuln. All your guys have power weapons.
Yeah, no, I cut him up really easily. And then in the bottom, the Intercessor actually fails against his... or he doesn't fail, but I just get a flesh wound on his Berserker in the bottom middle.
Right.
And that's the one Berserker that ends up... Oh, actually, no. I actually failed to kill his Berserker on the right and the one in the middle, but I killed one on the left. So
yeah, he
comes out of this round killing 1. I killed 2 of his guys, so I get kill more.
Mm-hmm.
And so like my even when I got to fight, my dice weren't amazing. It was really the saves where it really came in clutch.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, I was pretty due for a round like that, I think.
Oh yeah.
Round 3 happens, and he makes another mistake in this round that I think could have cost him the game. He decisive moves so that he can lock up my Storm Shield with a cultist.
Yeah, I pointed that out during commentary. The only thing that I could have think of for the reason why he would have want to do that would be to attempt to score Vicious Assault. But the thing with that line of thinking was all of his other models that could have made a charge, I believe at this point, were already stuck in combat.
Yeah, he did end up getting Vicious Assault because of the decisive move, but I think it was like at a point it's like at what cost? Because yes, he locks down my Storm Shields with cultists and he keeps his Berserkers that are alive in combat, but the way this happens in practice is his cultists get to swing at me, which is like hitting on 4s, winning on 5s.
And then they just bounce off.
Yeah, they bounce off, and then because I won initiative, I get to fight first.
Yeah.
So what happens is there's still the guy alive in the middle. So for my movement phase after he does that decisive, and the issue with the decisive really is that it brings him down to 1 CP.
Right.
So I go up to 1 CP also because my leader died. So he could have decisive striked uncontested, but he decisive moved, so he didn't have that opportunity anymore. When it's my turn to move, I have the 2 Storm Shields alive on the left side, and I charge one of them down into the Berserker that's alive in the middle bottom. And then, of course, I've still got that other Storm Shield, and I'm looking at my options, and I'm thinking, no matter what I do, I have to charge a Flamer right now. And I mean, I'm relatively confident that I can survive a Flamer, but it's still a chance for something to go wrong.
Yeah, Flamers are scary for Storm Shields.
And ultimately, I said, okay, I'm going to charge a Flamer. This is what's going to happen. I think the math is still good for me to live most of the time. But he ends up getting me. I fail an armor save, and I think I re-roll it with my 1 CP and then fail the re-roll. And then he gets me out of action.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was a little bit worried again.
Yeah, because this is your Relic Blade Vanguard Sergeant. This is your most efficient at killing in close combat model on your roster.
Yeah, and he was suddenly out. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, this isn't great. And then I look down at that grav gun that failed to charge before I rolled Snake Eyes, and I say, one more time.
He's 2 inches closer than he was last turn, so...
So I declare that cultist again on the left side, thinking if I kill him, then that's a for sure hold one for me.
Right.
And I declare the charge, and he falls back, so it's now an 11-inch charge. Well, no, it was a 10-inch charge, but he was exactly 11 away.
Right.
And he falls back, and I fail the first save, and then I make the second one, I think with boxcars or something. So
Yeah.
it kind of went back around, and I get onto that guy, and we go to the fight phase, and he gets to fight. Well, I get to fight first with my storm shield at the bottom that charged, and I kill that guy. And so then he's down to one berserker left, and then he fights with his cultist. It bounces off.
Right.
He fights with the other cultist. It bounces off. I fight with the grav gun guy who finally got in, and he cuts the cultist down with his chainsword, which is pretty. I think the math is pretty good on that. I mean, 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s. He gets a 6-up save. The only dicey part was it was 1 damage, so it was a coin flip.
Yeah, on the injury roll.
The funny thing is, in all likelihood, even if I flesh wounded him, he would have ended up shaking almost certainly.
Yeah, because it's a cultist.
Yeah. So I would have held that point in the left no matter what, I think. But after he fails, after all the charges are done, I get to fight first, and there's 1 berserker left in combat with my storm shield, who both of those guys are non-chargers. So I fight with the storm shield, and I kill the berserker. And that's his last berserker that's left. So at this point, even with my losses, what he has lost is far more significant. And he kind of wanted to call it there, and I said, well, hold on, like you're still going to hold more this round, you know.
Yeah, there's still a chance.
Yeah, and then he says, well, hold on, I need a break. And I'm like, all right, well, let's see how this goes. He fails his break test, which his highest leadership at this point was 7 because his champion died turn 2. So I think he rolled like a 9 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody shakes. He doesn't after his gunner fails, which was on like a 4-up, I think. Every cultist needed a 1, and they all failed across the board. And that was the point where he just called it.
Yeah,
because it would have been, I would have gone Reaper the next turn because I had 5 out at that point, and everybody was shaken. It was pretty much over at that stage. And that was it.
Yeah,
it was a crazy game 3.
That was a crazy game 3. It was a crazy series, and once again, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Definitely a well-deserved victory. It was a insane series.
It was scary. I was definitely a bit worried for a while.
Yeah. So, I guess there's like anything else you want to talk about your tournament run or the finals or your roster or anything. We can talk about that, or we can just wrap up this portion of the podcast and get into the mailbag.
Yeah, I mean, I guess...
you think of anything?
I think my most intense game was that game 3 of the tournament easily. Honorable mention to the game with James Skinner, which I won 11-10, and the only reason that was close is because both of us just made so many mistakes in that game, myself included. I really messed up a lot. The finals were about as exciting as anybody could have asked for.
Yeah, Birinid was literally on his feet. I think I may have blown out some people's eardrums.
Yeah.
Rip headphones users who had tuned into that stream. Because I mean, like when all of those Storm Shields guys made all those saves, it was just like me, Sean, and Birinid were just like, "What? This is unreal!" It was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, if you're listening to this and you haven't watched the game, go to our YouTube channel right now and watch it. It'll probably be up when you're listening. I mean, Micro is an amazing player. I did not expect it to be easy by any means.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Well, all right. We'll take a quick break here, and then when we come back, we'll start opening the mailbag. All right, so we are back here, and we are going to open up the mailbag.
Mailbag. I feel like we need to get like a
jingle or something.
Yeah, whenever we do the mailbag stuff.
Yeah, kind of like you remember Blue's Clues? Don't they do like a
mail
song or
time?
something whenever they get mail? Yeah, mail time.
Time. Something like that, yeah.
I love the Postal Service.
Yeah, man, we love it.
I support them 100%. Okay, so first question we have is from Clayton, aka Claypers Clay Pierce?
Clay Percy? I don't know what the last name is, but it's Clay.
Yeah. Obviously from our Discord. He asks basically what to think about when mustering during a tournament. So you have like that 15-minute period of time in a real-world tournament where you are looking over your opponent's combat roster. You're picking out what kill team you're going to field. You're going to be picking your secondaries. stuff like that. So what do you
Yeah.
usually think about?
I mean, I think it's important to like, yeah, obviously. So say you're in a real tournament, you've got this short period of time where you're figuring out what
well,
faction
not a
you're-
real tournament, just an in-person
Well, yeah,
tournament.
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You've got the short period of time where like you're looking across and you're figuring out what faction you're playing against. You got to figure out your secondaries. I mean, at this point, the secondaries should be like, you should just know them. You should be able to like, you shouldn't be looking at the secondaries during mustering and being like, what does this do? Maybe this is good. Like,
Yeah.
you should already know.
Before the tournament even happens,
Yeah.
you should know what secondaries in the packet your roster is going to be good at claiming at.
For sure, yeah.
Good at claiming.
You want to look at the main things you're looking at: enemy faction, deployment, and where are the objectives and how many objectives. So like if there's objectives closer to you, it might be a little bit safer to take, like for instance, like a steadfast. If there's like a deployment or an objective like really close to your deployment, steadfast is suddenly like a really viable option. But if all the objectives are like right in the middle of the board, don't take steadfast, right? Because you're going to be fighting over it the whole time. Like you could easily lose it because you rolled bad or something.
Yeah.
Just don't put yourself in those positions. I mean, I'm thinking about it from like a BAO perspective.
Yeah.
It's different for like LVO because there's more options. So there might be like different, and there's like a different terrain setup and stuff like that. Just figure out. I mean, really, not just. I guess I glossed over one thing. After you figure out what the faction is, look at the roster because your opponent should have a roster.
Yeah.
Like
obviously.
on hand, like a physical one that they'll
Yeah.
hand you and you can look at. Look at that. Try and figure, like, if you don't know anything about this player and you're going in totally blind about them, and looking at their roster, like at the very least, you should be able to figure out their playstyle just from like the sub faction that they're running.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know, it's kind of a tough spot, but try and like look at their models, figure out what their win condition probably is, and just try and keep that in mind when you're picking your secondaries and your team.
Yeah. So do you think it's, I guess, in this instance, it's kind of more about perspective. So if I have 15 minutes to choose secondaries, dissect and try to guess what my opponent is going to be bringing, I'm more often going to be focused on just figuring out what I'm going to be bringing.
Yeah, no, that's a thing too. Like,
Because you can't really control what your opponent's going to be doing.
No.
Really. All you can do is muster the best force possible against that faction, and all you have to really go off of is the faction. There's 20 models on there. You got 15 minutes. You're not going to be able to know, okay, I know exactly what this guy is bringing, unless it's like Heretic Astartes on BAO or something.
you might have an idea.
Yeah,
Then.
there's a few cases like Custodes.
Yeah, you know it's coming.
Yeah.
But like somebody pulls out like a Space Marine list, it's like, oh God, what
It's
am I
like,
playing against?
yeah.
What is this?
It's better to just focus on bringing a team that's going to score you the most points,
yeah.
because that's what you can control.
Yep. Also look and see if your opponent has like invulns, like if they brought a lot of storm shields or something.
Yeah, because that'll determine what types of weapons you're going to want to be
Yeah.
bringing. There's another component to Clayton's question, which is, when are reserves good? So full stop, not good on arena, because you literally cannot do it on arena. That's
F tier
that's
on arena.
that's the joke.
Hot take.
So
On open, almost always, I think. Well, okay. If you have like a good shooting model, I think it's almost always good.
yeah, so I've had some success with Deathwatch frag cannon gunners outflanking.
Yep.
6 inches away from a model.
If like you're
That's
playing
terrifying.
a psychic faction, I think it's always good to put a psyker in reserve.
Yeah, a psyker appearing in your backline is horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, like Sean talked about this when we did the Grey Knights deep dive, but like the first thing that happens after a deep strike is psychic phase.
Yeah.
There's like nothing your opponent can do about it other than
No.
try to screen you out.
Mm-hmm.
And another reason why it's good to use reserves is because your opponent, they're either going to screen you out and prevent you from doing like the really nice thing, or they're not. And in both of these situations, something good is happening. So if they're screening you out, then they're making moves that they don't want to make.
Yeah,
they're not
they're committing models to points on the board where otherwise they could be claiming objectives, moving closer to your guys, setting up in good firing positions.
Yeah, and if they don't, then you get to make the sick play and jump in their back line and blast them with whatever it is that you have.
Michael Jordan dunking, except it's a Tempestus Scion with a Meltagun.
Yeah.
Just blowing a hole in.
Yeah, and that's another thing. If you have a deep strike tactic, it's really good because it's really hard to screen that out.
Yeah.
Especially a deep strike tactic on like a model with a gun, like the Scion that you're talking about.
Right.
I mean, I guess the most relevant thing right now that people are thinking about is LVO, and on that map, I think it's pretty good to use deep strikes even for the melee models because you can actually deep strike up on those big towers.
Yeah.
You know, like, and then you set up a really nice charge because even if there's somebody right at the foot of the tower, you're more than 6 inches away from them because those towers are, or more than 5 inches away from them because those towers are 6 inches high from the very top. And the charge for you is going to be like 1 or 2 inches.
Yeah.
Because you're just walking off, you know. So that's pretty cool to think about. I think reserves are awesome. Like, I know I learned talking to like people on the West Coast that us like East Coast people, at least us Rochester people, like you, me, Sean, Ray, like the people in our local meta,
right?
We use reserves a lot more than the West Coast people do.
Yeah.
And I think that reserves are huge. So,
is there any faction that you really, I guess, wouldn't be looking at using reserves a lot? I mean, like you talked about, if your faction has like a deep strike tactic,
yeah,
then there's going to be instances where that's good to use because it's so hard to screen out against it. But yeah, can you just think of any factions off the top of your head that you wouldn't want to be?
I mean, I can't
forced
think
to
of
use outflank if you were to reserve.
Oh yeah, like when I play my Death Skulls, like I'll out, like I don't have a deep strike tactic for my knobs, but I'll still put them in reserves. The guys with the Scorches,
right?
Because you know they can pop on the board, and if they're within 8 inches of somebody, they can flame them, and that's pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a faction where I would never do it. Like even like Custodes, where I usually wouldn't, because there's only like 3 of them. Like I still think there's a time and place for that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they shoot good, so
they
you know
well,
they deep strike in, or sorry, they outflank in. They're still going to be able to shoot something, and you know they're like hitting on 2's base with their halberds or whatever.
I mean, maybe it's like a full melee team that has good movement.
Yeah, because then it's like, why?
Yeah.
The other thing to take into consideration with reserves is terrain. So if the terrain favors you in such a way that just models in your deployment zone have good line of sight on things like objectives or even like your opponent's deployment zone, certain avenues that they can approach from, just like shooting alleys, stuff like that, you can keep models in reserve, force your opponent to try to screen you out, and then for the low price of 0 CP, just bring in that reserve model into your own deployment zone.
Yeah.
And if there's like, this doesn't really happen a lot, but if there's like a tower in your deployment zone, you can just put a Primaris. I guess I probably wouldn't bring a Primaris Eliminator in reserve because of their abilities and everything, but just for the sake of this example, just some type of a model with the suppressor.
Yeah, as long as it's on a board edge, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking about using like reserves to like get shots off turn 1.
Right.
Like on the flip side, you can also use reserves to like obviously there's the initiative problem where you, if you go first against a shooting team, they get to react to how you move and then shoot you. Like say you're the main, say like here's like a good example, like if you're playing Necrons and like the flayed ones have the deep strike tactic, and you're against like AdMech plasma spam or something, you could put 3 flayed ones in reserve, and even if you go first, that's still 3 flayed ones that you can put down after the AdMech player moves.
Yeah,
that
so you
can't
can
get
set
shot
them up outside of line of sight, stuff like that. Yeah. So that's reserves.
Yeah.
This next question comes from Micromancer, funnily enough. He asks, and this is honestly a surprising question coming from him. So his question was, how should he be prepping for long format tabletop simulator tournaments when he often knows the match /mission ahead of the time of the actual game. So I guess like how should he be using that time to prep for the match?
Yeah, I mean, this goes for anybody. I'm sure Micro is doing a pretty good job prepping.
Yeah, I mean, he came in second.
Yeah. So the only time these are really going to happen, generally speaking, is Tabletop Simulator, right? So
right.
You can, what I was doing, like you can sad hammer full games, but I actually didn't find myself doing it that much because there's only so much that you can predict that your opponent will do. Yeah. And then eventually the dice are put you in such a specific situation that like the prep isn't even useful anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But like looking like going into that map with your team, the list that you want to bring, deploying, and then measuring from your deployment zone to see what movements you can make and like what you need to get onto a certain objective, or like if putting your guys in a certain way can like really help you. I think just practicing that turn one is like the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's what I've found too. And then it's kind of like all the sad hammering after that, you're kind of getting diminished returns.
Yeah, for sure.
On your time investment. And then instead of sand hammering, if you're on our Discord, you can also hit up other players who play that faction. Yeah. You can ask them, hey, you want to play a game? You want to run my opponent's list against me?
Before I had to play Benji and his Necrons, I reached out to Matt, who is a Necron player, and I asked him if he could like try and run Benji's list against me and try to like do something similar to what we thought he would do, and that was really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So this question comes from Kill Team Dave on the Discord. Why is the community not resistant to the 2019 annual changes? I'm paraphrasing here, but he's talking specifically about things like the intercessors losing an Auspex, the Space Marine intercessors losing the ability to bring in Auspex, and the Orc Chappas being +1 points, or increasing by 1 point in points cost, and then what's that third thing?
The Chaos Space Marine no longer being allowed to take a combat specialist.
Right.
I mean, like I think you made a good point. Like the Auspex thing seems like a misprint.
Yeah.
So I think the community is a bit resistant to that one.
Oh yeah, I'm yet to play a game or in a tournament where it's been ruled that an intercessor cannot take an Auspex.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you look at the text.
Yeah,
it's obvious that it's a misprint.
They just carried it over from core rulebook, and they forgot about
otherwise
the FAQ.
Then the intercessors' grenade launchers are suddenly have a 30-inch range at no long range penalties. So I mean,
the other so okay, I guess we can just tackle all three.
Yeah.
I don't think that we should be resistant to the Orc Chappa changes, because even if we disagree with them, unlike the Auspex thing, this feels deliberate.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it was an intentional change, and at the end of the day, we're playing a Games Workshop game, and we should play by their rules. I mean, I don't think that the Chappa change was all that warranted, but, what can you do? And the Chaos Space Marine one, that one kind of falls in the middle. It seems kind of weird to me that they took that off, but it's something that just doesn't come up, so nobody really cares.
Yeah, I feel like the reason we haven't seen a lot of uproar about it, at least on like in our community, is just because it's suboptimal. Yeah. More often than not, to be running a regular Chaos Space Marine as a combat specialist when you have things like the Khorne Berserkers.
Yeah, I mean, maybe before Elites, people were doing that sometimes, but like not really anymore.
Just because they didn't have a choice, really.
Yeah.
So yeah. Also, like this, overall, for the better health of the game, it's better for us to embrace the changes, because Kill Team is a niche game of the big Warhammer 40K.
Yeah.
And so many changes happen in that game so fast. And Kill Team is almost starved for change at this point.
Yeah, we'll take anything we can get.
Yeah,
even if it sucks.
For the health of the game, it's better not to reject Games Workshop changes. All right, so the last question we have for today's mailbag comes from our own close friend Ray J. So he is asking about subfaction specific stratagems. So of course, when he means stratagems, he's talking about tactics
Yeah.
in Kill Team.
Yeah, he's basically asking, like, should this be a thing? Like,
Yeah,
I think it'd be pretty cool.
I would love it.
I mean, that's like, so, like, at this point, the wish list is so long.
It's so long.
I mean, but this would be on there. I think it's kind of neat, the idea that you could, like, give, like, a really cool, like, tactic to one sub-faction specifically.
Yeah.
Instead of the whole faction, whereas, like, you know, like, it might be a little bit broken if every sub-faction could take it, but, you know, on one it might work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think, like, what if, like, only Space Wolves, for instance, could take Death Denied or something? I don't know, something like that. Or, like, Angels of Death, that one, if, like, only Blood Angels could take that.
Yeah.
Not that these are, like, well,
Yeah.
not that Angels of Death is, like, a broken tactic right now, but, like, it would be kind of, it's, like, an
Yeah.
interesting thought experiment.
Yeah. Not really like taking tactics away from like the general pool of tactics that the factions already have, but adding new tactics
Yeah.
that could only be used by certain sub-factions.
Like, with that balance in mind, I
Yeah.
think it's kind of cool.
So like in big Warhammer 40k, every army has their own codex. So like Space Wolves have their own set of tactics. Blood Angels have their own set of tactics. List goes on and on. It would be great for the game just
I think so,
because you're running a sub-faction now. You get to do sub-faction specific things, which is just cool. It's just a
Yeah.
cool way of fleshing out your sub-faction. And it adds an additional layer of, I want to say complexity, but not complexity. I'll say depth.
Yeah, for sure.
There's another level of depth.
There's
that
already
I
some of
think
this
that people would
already.
enjoy.
Like with Astartes, like only like Blood Angels can take certain things that others can't, like Space Wolves 2 and Dark
Right.
Angels. Like there's stuff like that, but I don't think any other factions have this, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
I don't think there's any. I mean, I guess like Drakari are kind of weird because only certain models can be of a sub faction, but like there's other stuff like that. But
Yeah.
Drakari just like takes it to another level.
Yeah. To be fair, I haven't been playing much outside of Astartes, so
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else really like that, where like certain models can only take certain equipment with a certain sub faction. I think that stuff is kind of cool though. It
yeah.
adds more identity.
Yeah.
And you know, some of the sub factions that are like fringe right now, it would be like a cool little boost to those.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How would you feel about sub-faction specific models? So, like Blood Angels have units called like Sanguinary Guard, and they're
It could be
Space
interesting.
Wolves, Wolfen.
Well, there's already kind of stuff like that, like sort of like a freeboot, like Flash Gets can only be freebooters.
right.
I mean, you could take them in other lists, but they just can't have that sub faction.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an example. And like Scions can only get the Scion bonus. Be interesting.
Yeah.
That'd be cool if they added like something like that.
Just adding more
Yeah.
to Kill Team.
We always
would
want
be
more.
would be nice. All right. Yeah. So that wraps it up for today's mailbag.
Mailbag. So would we have the mailbag song like after and before? I think we should.
Sure. Sure. I'll try to find a mailbag song. Or
Please
something.
do. Yeah, find like the Blue's Clues song or something.
I don't know. I don't want to get sued by
That's
Nickelodeon
true.
for copyright.
That's true. Yeah. They're after us.
They are after us. Yeah. Can't play hackety sack on stream, Sean.
Yeah, I guess not.
God. I almost swore.
God darn.
Gosh darn it.
Yeah, I mean, nothing else to talk about, right? I mean, is there anything else you wanted to?
No, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Command Point Podcast. If you like what you're listening to, hit that subscribe button, share, like, comment, whatever it is you do. Come over to our Discord. We're having a great old time there.
Yep. If you're not there, you're missing out.
Yeah,
Let
you
me tell
really
you.
are. Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not on our Discord, it's kind of weird.
I know for a fact there's more people listening than there are people on the Discord, so something is clearly wrong
Yeah, yeah.
here. We need to remedy this problem. So go on the Discord, start talking to people. Even if you don't play Tabletop Simulator, there's still so much like regular Kill Team discussion going on. Yeah,
It's free.
worth it. And it's free.
It's free. You get to talk to all like the big competitive Kill Team players, basically. Pick
Yep.
their brains, play games.
Yep. And they're all really friendly. If you reach out to them, they will almost definitely talk to you.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else?
No, that wraps it up. So, yep. Thanks for listening, and
See you later, guys.
hope to hear you all again soon. Bye-bye.